Days Gone. Days Gone got a lot of criticism when it launched, and honestly, some of it was fair. The game had its share of bugs, and it didn't reinvent the wheel. But if you give it a chance, there's a solid, heartfelt game beneath the surface. You play as Deacon St. John, a biker trying to survive in a post-apocalyptic world filled with zombie-like freakers. The story focuses on loss, loyalty, and finding purpose when everything else is gone. Deacon might seem rough around the edges, but his character grows and his journey feels genuine. What Days Gone does well is atmosphere. The Oregon wilderness is stunning, with dynamic weather and day-night cycles that actually affect gameplay. Freaker hordes are terrifying, and taking them on whether sneaking around or going in guns blazing is incredibly satisfying. Your bike is your lifeline, and managing fuel and repairs adds a layer of survival without feeling like a chore. The game rewards patience. The more time you spend with the story and side characters, the more it clicks. The pacing can feel slow at first, but the payoff is worth it. It's not perfect, but it's a game that grows on you if you let it. Days Gone may not have wowed everyone at launch, but it's earned a second look. It's immersive, emotional, and offers a world that's worth exploring. Alpha Protocol. Alpha Protocol was written off by many when it launched, mostly because of its janky mechanics and rough edges, but underneath those flaws lies a game that dares to do something bold, a true espionage RPG, where your choices really matter. You play as Michael Thornton, a spy caught in a web of conspiracy and betrayal. The story takes you across the globe from Saudi Arabia to Moscow as you uncover hidden agendas and decide where your loyalties lie. What sets Alpha Protocol apart is how much control you have over the narrative. Your decisions, how you handle missions, who you trust, and even how you talk to people shape the story in ways that feel organic. The gameplay mixes stealth, shooting, and dialogue. Sure, the combat can feel clunky, and the AI isn't great, but the depth of choice and customization makes up for it. You can build Thornton as a stealthy ghost, a guns blazing operative, or something in between. The dialogue system, based on timed responses, forces you to think on your feet, adding tension to every interaction.
Hey, yeah. And considering that item...
What's most impressive is how much your actions ripple through the story. Characters remember how you treated them, alliances shift, and endings change based on your approach. It's a game where no two playthroughs feel the same. Alpha Protocol might not be polished, but it's ambitious and unique. If you can look past its flaws, it offers one of the most rewarding role-playing experiences out there. It's a hidden gem that deserves a second chance. Metal Gear Survive. Metal Gear Survive had a tough launch, and it's easy to see why. It came out shortly after Hideo Kojima's split from Konami, and fans were skeptical of a spin-off that traded espionage for survival, but if you set those expectations aside, there's actually a decent survival game here. The story is bizarre. You're transported to an alternate dimension filled with zombie-like creatures called Wanderers. It's not a Metal Gear story in the traditional sense, but it does enough to tie into the universe while still standing on its own. The gameplay is where Survive shows its strengths. It takes the solid mechanics of Metal Gear Solid 5 stealth, base building, and combat, and layers on survival elements like crafting, scavenging, and managing hunger and thirst. The focus on resource management adds a layer of tension that fits the hostile world you're stuck in. Co-op is where the game shines. Teaming up with others to defend your base or take on waves of enemies is genuinely fun and adds variety to the experience. The solo campaign has its moments too, especially when you're exploring dangerous areas for supplies while avoiding wanderers. Metal Gear Survive isn't what fans wanted, but judged on its own merits, it's a solid survival game with tight mechanics and some interesting ideas. It's not the best in the series, but it's far from the disaster many assumed it would be. If you give it a shot, you might find more to like than you expect. Mafia III. Mafia III didn't land smoothly when it launched. People criticized the repetitive missions and bugs, but underneath those issues is a game with a lot of heart and an unforgettable story. You play as Lincoln Clay, a Vietnam veteran out for revenge after his surrogate family is betrayed and wiped out by the mob. Set in 1968 in the fictional New Bordeaux, the game tackles heavy themes like racism, betrayal, and the cost of vengeance. It's bold, raw, and doesn't shy away from showing the harsh realities of its time. The world feels alive, with its swampy backroads, jazz-filled bars, and neighborhoods oozing with personality. The gameplay revolves around taking down the mob piece by piece. And while some missions can feel repetitive, the variety in how you approach them, stealth, brute force, or somewhere in between, keeps things interesting. What really stands out is the story and characters. Lincoln is a complex protagonist, and the supporting cast like Father James and CIA Agent Donovan add layers to the narrative. The documentary-style storytelling, where characters reflect on Lincoln's actions years later, gives the game a unique and emotional edge. Mafia III might not be perfect, but it's a game with something to say. If you can look past the rough edges, it's a gripping tale of revenge and justice set in one of the most immersive time periods gaming has to offer. Far Cry New Dawn. Far Cry New Dawn didn't make a great first impression, mostly because it was a follow-up to Far Cry 5 that reused the same map with a new coat of paint, but dig a little deeper and you'll find a fun, fast-paced spin on the series formula that does a lot right. Set in a post-apocalyptic Hope County, New Dawn takes place 17 years after the events of Far Cry 5. The world is vibrant and colorful, a refreshing change from the usual grim, brown wastelands we get in post-apocalyptic games. You play as the captain, helping survivors rebuild and fend off the highwaymen, a gang led by the twin sisters, Mickey and Lou. The gameplay leans into crafting and scavenging with a focus on upgrading your base and gear. The introduction of expeditions, missions that take you to unique locations outside Hope County adds variety and breaks up the usual open world formula. Combat feels familiar but fun, with an emphasis on experimentation thanks to makeshift weapons like the saw launcher. The story isn't groundbreaking, but it's serviceable with a few surprising callbacks to Far Cry 5 that tie the two games together. Mickey and Lou don't quite reach the level of past Far Cry villains, but they bring enough personality to keep things interesting. Far Cry New Dawn doesn't reinvent the wheel, but it offers a streamlined, enjoyable take on the series with a more focused scope. If you're a fan of the Far Cry formula or just looking for something colorful and chaotic, it's worth a second look. The Order 1886. The Order 1886 had a rough start, mostly because of its short length and focus on cinematic storytelling over gameplay, but if you give it a shot, it's a surprisingly rich experience with some strong points that were overlooked at launch. Set in an alternate Victorian London, the game follows Sir Galahad, a member of an elite group of knights sworn to protect the world from supernatural threats. The story is steeped in lore, blending historical elements with steampunk gadgets and dark fantasy creatures like werewolves. It's a unique setting that's brought to life with jaw-dropping visuals and attention to detail. The gameplay is straightforward. It's a cover-based shooter with solid mechanics, a mix of traditional firearms and creative steampunk weapons. While it doesn't push boundaries in its combat, the pacing keeps it engaging, especially when the story starts to dig into betrayal and conspiracy. What the Order 1886 does best is atmosphere. The world feels alive, from the foggy streets to the ornate interiors, and the cinematic presentation makes every scene feel polished. The characters, while not deeply explored, are compelling enough to carry the narrative. Yes, it's short, and yes, it leans heavily on cutscenes, but if you go in knowing that it's an immersive, beautifully crafted ride that's worth experiencing for its world building and style, the Order 1886 isn't the game people wanted, but it's better than its reputation suggests. Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Shadow of the Tomb Raider got mixed reactions when it launched, but it deserves more credit than it gets. It's the third game in Lara Croft's rebooted trilogy, and this time it focuses on her journey to stop a Mayan apocalypse while coming to terms with her role in causing it. The game leans heavily into exploration and puzzle solving more so than its predecessors. The tombs are a highlight bigger, more complex, and filled with a sense of danger and mystery. If you've been waiting for a Tomb Raider game that truly feels like it's about raiding tombs, this one delivers. The jungle setting is stunning with dense foliage, vibrant wildlife, and hidden secrets everywhere. The stealth mechanics take full advantage of it, letting you use mud to camouflage yourself and blend into the environment. Combat feels more optional this time, which fits the game's slower, more introspective tone. The story is darker and more personal. Lara faces both external threats and internal struggles, questioning her motivations and the consequences of her actions. While the narrative doesn't always hit its emotional beats perfectly, it's a fitting end to her arc. Shadow of the Tomb Raider isn't a huge departure from the formula, but it refines what the series does well. If you enjoy exploration, puzzles, and immersive settings, it's a satisfying conclusion to the trilogy that's worth revisiting. Mass Effect Andromeda. Mass Effect Andromeda had a rough launch with bugs and inconsistent writing drawing heavy criticism, but beneath the missteps lies a game with strong exploration and a new galaxy worth uncovering. You play as Ryder, a pathfinder leading the search for humanity's future in the Andromeda galaxy. The story focuses on discovery and survival as you explore alien worlds, form alliances, and deal with the challenges of starting over in uncharted space. While the narrative doesn't reach the heights of the original trilogy, it captures the spirit of exploration and possibility. The gameplay is a clear highlight. Combat feels fluid, with a jetpack adding verticality and mobility. The flexibility in character builds allows you to mix and match abilities without being locked into a class, giving you freedom in how you approach fights. The planets are diverse and open, offering a mix of main objectives and side missions. Driving the Nomad across alien landscapes and upgrading settlements adds to the feeling of forging a path in a new galaxy. The visuals, especially the environments, are stunning, making the galaxy feel vast and full of potential. While Andromeda has flaws, it also has moments of wonder and excitement. If you enjoy the Mass Effect series or games centered on exploration and choices, it's worth revisiting. It's not perfect, but it offers a fresh take on a beloved universe. No Man's Sky. No Man's Sky had a rocky start. Its launch promised a universe of possibilities but left many players disappointed. Over time though, the game has grown into something remarkable thanks to consistent updates and a dedicated team. You begin as an explorer stranded on an alien planet. From there, the universe opens up, you gather resources, upgrade your ship, and decide your path, whether that's exploring strange planets, building bases, trading, or even taking on space pirates. The freedom is endless, and every system you visit feels unique. The game's visuals are striking with vibrant landscapes, bizarre creatures, and skies that stretch forever. Each world feels like a new discovery, whether you're braving harsh environments or uncovering ancient ruins. The music complements the exploration perfectly, creating a calm yet adventurous vibe. The updates have transformed the game. Features like multiplayer, deeper base building, and story-driven content give players more ways to engage with the universe. Whether you want a relaxed solo experience or a co-op adventure with friends, there's something here for everyone. No Man's Sky is a game about discovery and wonder. It encourages you to take your time, chart your own course, and enjoy the journey. If you skipped it at launch, it's worth revisiting now. It's a game that shows what dedication and growth can achieve. Rage. Rage had all the makings of a hit post-apocalyptic setting, solid gunplay, and a world built by ID Software, but it stumbled with its story and structure, leaving many players underwhelmed. Still, if you strip away the expectations, what's left is a fun, well-crafted shooter that knows how to make combat feel satisfying. You play as a survivor in a wasteland after an asteroid has wiped out most of humanity. The story is straightforward factions fight for control, and you're caught in the middle. While the plot doesn't break new ground, it serves as a backdrop for the action. The combat is where Rage shines, the weapons feel powerful, and the addition of gadgets like wing sticks gives fights a creative edge. Whether you're battling mutants in tight corridors or taking on raiders in open spaces, the gunplay feels smooth and rewarding. The world offers a mix of linear missions and open exploration. Driving plays a big role with vehicle combat and upgrades that add variety. The wasteland itself is visually striking, blending desolate landscapes with hints of a world trying to rebuild. Rage may not be a masterpiece, but it delivers solid gameplay and some genuinely fun moments. If you're looking for a shooter with great mechanics and don't mind a simple story, it's worth a play. It's not perfect, but it knows what it does well. Dead Rising. Dead Rising is chaotic, quirky, and far from your average zombie game. It throws you into a shopping mall filled with the undead and gives you the freedom to survive however you want or not survive at all, depending on your choices. It's a game that doesn't take itself too seriously, which is part of its charm. You play as Frank West, a photojournalist stuck in a mall during a zombie outbreak. The story is a mix of conspiracy, survival, and Frank's relentless hunt for the next scoop. The real twist, you're working against the clock. The game runs on a timer, so every action you take, every survivor you save or don't save, and every story you uncover feels like it has weight. The mall is packed with weapons, from the practical guns and bats to the ridiculous giant teddy bears and lawnmowers. The freedom to experiment and turn anything into a zombie slaying tool makes combat fun and unpredictable. The variety keeps the gameplay fresh, even when the core loop is simple. The timer can feel stressful at first, but it's what makes the game stand out. You're forced to prioritize and adapt, which adds tension to an otherwise playful experience. Combine that with Frank's camera, letting you score points for dramatic, violent, or humorous shots, and you've got a game that thrives on creativity. Dead Rising isn't perfect. The controls can feel clunky, and some mechanics like Survivor AI can frustrate, but it's a unique, memorable game that balances chaos and challenge in a way few zombie games manage. If you're up for a time-pressured survival experience with a side of humor, it's worth diving into. Assassin's Creed Unity. Assassin's Creed Unity had a rough launch, with bugs and performance issues overshadowing what the game got right. But years later, after updates and fixes, it stands as one of the series' most ambitious entries, offering a rich and immersive look at revolutionary Paris. You play as Arnaud Dorian, a young assassin caught in a web of political intrigue and personal revenge. The story doesn't stray far from the usual Assassin's Creed themes, but it's solid, with enough twists and emotional beats to keep you invested. The real star here is Paris. The city is stunning, with detailed architecture, vibrant streets, and a sense of life that few open-world games match. The interiors, a new feature at the time, add depth to exploration, letting you dive into buildings seamlessly. The crowds during riots and events create a sense of scale that makes the revolution feel alive. Gameplay focuses on stealth and combat, with revamped parkour mechanics that feel more fluid and precise. Customization is deeper than ever, allowing you to tailor Arnaud's abilities and gear to fit your playstyle. Co-op missions, though optional, add a fun layer of teamwork as you tackle heists and assassinations with friends. Assassin's Creed Unity still has its flaws, some repetitive missions and an uneven story, but it's a game that has grown into something worth playing. If you're drawn to historical settings or just want to lose yourself in one of the most beautiful open worlds in the series, it's well worth revisiting. Watch Dogs. Watch Dogs launched with big expectations and ended up polarizing players, but beneath the hype and criticism lies a game with some unique ideas. You play as Aiden Pierce, a vigilante hacker in a near-future Chicago. Armed with your phone, you can manipulate the city's infrastructure to take down enemies, evade the police, or uncover secrets. The gameplay blends hacking, stealth, and action. You can hack cameras, traffic lights, and even black out entire areas to create chaos or gain an edge. This approach gives you options whether you prefer sneaking through a mission undetected or going in guns blazing. The driving and combat mechanics are serviceable, but the hacking makes it stand out. The city itself feels alive, with NPCs carrying on their daily lives. You can eavesdrop on conversations, uncover side stories, and even stop random crimes. These little details make the world feel grounded, even if the main story doesn't always hit the mark. Aiden is a divisive character whose quest for revenge can feel one note, but his actions raise questions about surveillance and privacy that are still relevant. While it's not as polished or innovative as it aimed to be, Watch Dogs offers a fresh take on open world gameplay. If you're into tech-driven stories or enjoy games that reward creativity, it's worth a try. It may not have lived up to the hype, but it's a solid experience on its own terms. Mirror's Edge Catalyst. Mirror's Edge Catalyst is a reboot of the cult classic that aimed to expand the series into an open world. While it didn't completely stick the landing, it still offers a unique experience with its focus on free running and fluid movement. You play as Faith Connors, a runner navigating a futuristic city ruled by a strict corporate regime. The story digs into her past and her fight against the system, though it often takes a backseat to the gameplay. Movement is the heart of the game. The parkour mechanics feel smooth and satisfying as you leap across rooftops, slide under obstacles, and wall run through the sprawling cityscape. The open world design lets you choose how to approach objectives with side missions and time trials, adding variety. Combat has a bigger role this time, but it's mixed. Faith uses her speed and agility to outmaneuver enemies, avoiding guns entirely. While the melee-focused fights are a nice twist, they can sometimes disrupt the flow of the movement. The city itself is striking, with clean, minimalist architecture and vibrant colors that make it stand out from other open-world games. Exploring it feels rewarding, especially when you hit your stride and chain moves together seamlessly. Mirror's Edge Catalyst isn't perfect, but it's a one-of-a-kind experience that focuses on movement and momentum in a way few games do. If you can overlook its narrative missteps and occasional repetition, it's worth a look for its unique take on exploration and action. The Lords of the Fallen. Lords of the Fallen often gets written off as just a Souls-like, but it's more than that. Sure, it takes heavy inspiration from Dark Souls with its slow, methodical combat and challenging enemies, but it carves out its own space with a distinct tone and style. You play as Harkin, a convicted criminal who's given a chance at redemption by fighting off an invasion of monstrous gods called the Roger. The story isn't groundbreaking, but it sets up a dark, gritty world that's fun to explore. Combat is deliberate and weighty. Every swing of your weapon feels like a decision, and you're rewarded for timing and precision. The game leans into RPG mechanics with a variety of weapons, armor, and spells to customize your build. It's not as punishing as Dark Souls, making it a bit more approachable for players who want that style of gameplay without the extreme difficulty. The environments are moody and atmospheric, with crumbling castles, dark catacombs, and eerie Roga realms to explore. While the level design isn't as intricate as its inspirations, it has enough hidden paths and secrets to keep exploration interesting. Lords of the Fallen isn't perfect, some clunky mechanics and pacing issues hold it back, but it's still a solid action RPG with satisfying combat and a unique vibe. If you're into slower, more tactical games but want something a bit more forgiving, it's worth checking out.